Hey guys, Jason from Strictly Broken here, with an AOT 8-door deck tech. Me and my guest here, Carmen from Burn One. Say hi, Carmen.
So,
Say the thing, Carmen.
what's up, guys? We're here with yet another deck tech.
All right, thank you. So we decided to both play 8-door AOT at the Toronto Regionals over the weekend alongside my local. We played the same exact 50 card list. Me and Carmen both we both went 5 and 2 on the day, and my local went top 8. So this is going to be the same list you'll see if you go on Weiss Tea Time. Shout out to Weiss Tea Time and Taya for all the great deck recording she's doing for the events. We just wanted to kind of go over it and go over our thoughts because my local doesn't really do media, so I'm doing it for him. And why we decided to play this deck when AOT had just come out, and why we chose this deck specifically over 8 Pants, which Carmen also knows is like a lot more hyped, especially if we look at the community tier list.
For sure. Everybody's super into the Reiner deck for sure.
I like that deck, but in the end, we both kind of agree that this was the deck to be playing, especially for that event. So we'll start off with the card by card, and we'll talk about them as it comes up. So first card is To Seize Freedom Armin. This is the 3500 center runner. It is yellow. It is just the $30 card that you're going to see played in every deck that is playing core and AOT. I don't really think there's any good replacement for this card. So you're just going to slam 4 of this.
No, not at all.
Maybe you could do 3 if you really wanted something, but no less than 3 in a deck, I think.
3500 evasive runner is just really good profile right now.
Just too good. Then we have our new card, Levi, Merciless Assault. He is a Ricky, so pay 1, clock 1, search for level 1 or lower. And then he gets one other attacks, he gets 1k power. So he can attack at 35, which is like really relevant, I think, especially right now. It's come up for me a lot. I don't know if it's come up for you, Carmen.
Yeah, for sure. The fact that you can, when your opponent has an opposing center runner, especially against Quints, if they're playing like 1k1 or even some standby builds that are opting to play it, the fact that you have other cards in the deck that could send these to 4k, your opponent cannot run after you Ricky when you go first, is really nice.
Yeah, I also like that you can use this card to kill their thing in the center if they put like their center runner or their Aqua, right? Like Hololive can put the Aqua in the center, you can kill it, and then have your Armin still be free to move in the center, which I think has come up actually. Comes up more in testing than an actual play. I didn't play against Hololive at the event, but I don't really mind that I didn't. Played against a lot of Quints. So then our next card, this card is also new. The Armin Lending a Hand. This is a card that people saw in spoilers and was not too sure about. It is a tap self-salvage Brainstorm with an additional effect that says pay 2, rest itself, Brainstorm. For every climax you hit, you salvage a climax. So it helps you with getting your extra climaxes. And before, we were both on the Mikasa the Brainstorm because it made the Armin 4k when it moved, and it was pretty cool. It was also red. But we realized we needed more yellow, and this also gave us more room to play other cards because this became our card that guaranteed our climax. And it has put in a lot of work.
Better. Yeah, it was a lot better in practice than the card might read. I implore everybody to try this card out.
Yeah,
as they're testing all builds of Attack on Titan.
Actually kind of insane. Because when you think about it, you end up paying 2 for your climax you want a lot of the time anyway, between going and playing like a Kazuma, Rumia, the pay 1 drop a character, check 4, whatever, that you can play in this set as well. You end up spending the same amount of stock as you would playing that and then CX swap, or like a Brainstorm for a CX swap and then playing the CX swap. This just kind of cuts out the middleman, says pay the 2 stock, if you get it, you get it. And sometimes if you hit 2, you can actually use the 2. Like I've hit 2 and grabbed Mikasa and Sasha's climax individually and then had them both and just kind of held them. That feels really good too.
It's really nice when you're just like when you're compressed and like you clock to get a climax. If your opponent's out after triggering, you don't get it and you're like, okay, Brainstorm for a climax to punish. That came up a couple times, both in testing and in the tournament.
Yeah, this card, just definitely try this card out. I don't think it's like super core, but I would personally not play without it at least anymore, I think.
Yeah, for me as well.
So next card is the Reiner Giving Advice. This ended up just being a flex card that we opted to play 2 extra plussing zeros. So we chose this card because there's not too many good plussing zeros that you can play a 2 of in AOT. There's the Mikasa Mill Runner from set 1. There's the new Mikasa Clean Cut. And I guess there's technically the Gabby clean cut that you can be playing. She's Eldian, but it hits most of the deck anyway. This card being it's on attack, you give a character 1k, another character 1k power, and then it runs away from something. So some people like to call that an avoider, whatever you choose to call it. I like to call it a scaredy cat runner. But it just ends up, for me at least, it was really good. In the mirror and in the Quince matchups or any deck that's really playing its own 3400 center runner, this card ended up being like an all-star for me because it let me contest with whatever card I wanted to, win lanes, while still having a card that plus. So like I could, go Levi plus this, Ricky, buff the Levi power, and then tie, and then still have this card that could run around. I didn't really push damage and push him to 1 either, so I could realistically get a plus, which I liked a lot.
You can also sequence the avoider and the center runner however you want. Mm-hmm. So if it happens that your opponent tries to field like Aqua in the center or something like that on a they cancel and they stay at 0, you can move the avoider, then run the center runner. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, it's very flexible. It's very cool. Going forward, me and Carmen both agreed we're going to go try -1 of this for another card that's going to be coming up. Just to try to move ratios around, see how it goes. I like 2 of this, so I'm kind of hesitant to go down below 2, but maybe. It's definitely a flex card in the end.
Yeah. The card that might replace its count is also very strong. So
yeah, for sure.
We'll get to that soon.
Now we have Arter Browse. This is the most innocuous card, I think, that also just overperforms all the time. He reads Assist 5, and then Rest 2, any 2 characters, give one of your characters Onward's Blind Stock. That is an effect we've seen in a lot of sets before. For example, just Quince has this card. It's not Assist 5, it gives something 1k on Climax phase, but they have the Rest for Stock effect. And I think some people did choose to play that, depending if you played Ichika top end. In this deck specifically, I think it does a lot. You have a lot of cards that want to spend stock, while also not needing a lot of stock. And you have a lot of cards, your level 3 combo scales really well with how much extra stock you have in a game. So having a card like this that just sits in the back row, it makes your level 1 combo 6k, which is really sick. And then it also just helps you generate extra resources to spend throughout the game. It just feels really good all the time. And you don't get punished for having this card because there's nothing you really need to be having in the back row besides your Brainstorm for most of the game anyway. So
yeah. Card's super MVP.
Yeah, it is.
Brainstorm, it's a free stock. It has really good ways to convert into Armin in matchups where you don't need to tap down Armin for power to convert into Armin Changer. You can use Arter, you can promote him, tap down your back row with your Brainstorm, and then change into Armin, which is a really sick play. You just get an Armin for free.
I've done that all the time. Whenever you don't need the 2-1 buff, it feels so sick to do. It's just, this card is when you play with it, I think you'll see it stronger than when it reads. It does not read super strong, it does not look super impactful, and then you start playing with it, and as long as you think about it and play into this card, it overperforms for sure. Then we have our 1 of Historia Political Meeting. This is the card that the Reiner would become a 2 of. This card is on play, look at the top card of your deck and keep it or put it into your grave. And then discard 1 from your hand. If you do, reveal the top card of your deck. Salvage a character whose level is equal to or lower, so a Rico effect. This card is basically just a Rico that is 1k weaker or 500 weaker, depending on the trait. Is it? Is it traded?
No, it's
not traded. So it is 500 lower than the other Rico. This card is kind of broken. Surveil on a Rico feels really strong, because you get to confirm what it is, and then you can just go again. If it's not something you want, if it's a 0, having even another chance at just finding a card you want feels really strong. Or even just this card, if this is the top of your deck, and just be able to look at this and say, I want this card, mill it, and then flip again arbitrarily, and letting you grab the card feels really strong. It's not the super most common play in the world, but it's come up more than enough times, especially with cards in multiple copies, like the Ricky. I'll see a Ricky on the top of my deck, I don't have it in my hand, I'll just mill it and I'll grab it. And that feels
it's
really,
a Rico
really
that doubles as a pseudo selective console. It's really nice.
Yeah, this card just feels super duper good all the time. Also can act as a 5-card brainstorm for you too, which is pretty sick. You know, you mill a card, clean card. You don't want like a 0, flip a climax. Well, whatever, and then you just brainstorm and get whatever you want anyway. This is like a card I kind of wanted 2 of, but I kind of don't. Like, I never felt the need for 2 because I would grab it whenever I wanted it. But having 2 means I don't gotta waste selection on it, which is also probably pretty good. So I gotta fiddle around with the numbers some more. This list, we had to figure out this list within like a week. So
yeah, we had about a week and 2 days.
Definitely
testing.
aren't perfect, but this is a card that we were definitely like on and off between 2 copies of. So think about it, might be worth it. Then we just have our CX swap Sasha. She's just on play optional mill 3, pay 1, drop a climax, salvage a climax. Very standard. 2k power, good decent body. Not much to say. This is my favorite art in the set, by the way. But
I love the lobster Sasha.
Yeah, I debated also playing 2 copies of this. And there's a world where I just go like -1 Reiner, and just play 2/2. Not totally sure. This card being 2k means it's still like a good body, so that's fine. Something to think about. Just good card, standard. Then we have our level 1 combo of choice. We have the Mikasa climax. So this is Mikasa recovery mission and her climax perfect timing. She is just a 55 on off turn, 75 on attack with climax Maguro, but she also grabs the other card that we're going to talk about, the gear. Just good card. Attack on Titan really didn't have deck speed before at a level 1 combo, and they didn't really have like any good uninteractive combos. This is both of those. So it's just like a perfectly fine combo. I don't think this card is super duper strong, but I think it does everything you can ask of it. Honestly,
the right role player for the deck for sure.
Yeah, and like I said, with Artur, she's a 6k behind Artur. She's 7-5 behind the the Armin assist. Good numbers, like very very good. Like this card can actually survive sometimes accidentally, which I think is really funny. We debated playing Eren, maybe post Mushoku. I think there's like a world where you can really play Eren, but it's whatever. Like, yeah, I like Mikasa, especially in this deck. I also like that she gives you a door. Doors are sick. Plussing is pug.
Another door.
So this is one of our first like spicier cards. So this is Connie providing support. He reads offensive plus 3k. And then he was recently eroded. He says when this card and or its opponent dies, the character that gets reversed may not use Encore. So they cannot hand Encore, clock Encore, pay 3 Encore, anything. Anything that gives it Encore text, it may not do. This is meant to specifically hit Quince. Incidentally, also hits Hololive every now and then. This card was an MVP in every game that I played it.
Yeah,
this
agreed.
Does so much work. Versus Quince, this card can test their red 1/1. This card can test their 2/2. A lot of the Quince decks don't play backups. I noticed that some decks are starting to, and I think this might be one of the reasons they kind of have to. Because if this card kills the Nino 2/2, it can put Quince pretty far behind. It's really funny. A lot of my opponents kept telling me Connie didn't really feel like it did anything. But I beat, of the 3 Quince players I played on the day, I beat 2 of the 3. The third one was just like a pretty terrible game. Had nothing to do with my deck.
Same thing for me, actually. Yeah, the exact same situation.
Every game I had a real game. I played this card down probably 2 or 3 times. I killed their 2/2 every single time. I geared this card away, used it again. I just stunted their turns. They didn't deal damage to me. And then my opponent, only one of them ever told me that this card was actually like terrible to play against, and it felt really awful. Everybody else has always told me, oh, it doesn't feel like it does anything. But then I sit there and I'm like winning every game against Quince, so I don't know.
Yeah, like, I think it definitely does work in the Quince matchup.
I think people just don't think about it because they're still able to play cards, right? Like Quince gets to play cards. That's not a problem. But they don't get to push damage, which I think is the big thing. They don't have that early game damage push with the 2/2. And sometimes they have a harder time actually killing your board, was something I noticed a lot too. My Mikasas would survive a lot more often alongside Connie because you'd out their 2/2, and if they didn't have another 2/2, they'd have to play shitters. And so you plus more, which is like something like Quince does not want you to do. Quince wants you to burn your resources because that's how they leverage their 2/2 dying every turn, is that they're stunting you as well. So this card just excellent. there's a world where I wish I could play 3, but I think 2 is good enough and it's easy to see. So 2 is usually A-okay.
Yeah. Plenty of ways to pick it up.
Yeah. Another 2 of is the new gear, the new omnidirectional mobility gear. I hated this card when it first got released.
Everybody did.
Yeah. So what this card says is, it's a counter, and you can only use it if you have 2 or more climaxes in your grave. And then when you have 2 or more climaxes in your grave, you can choose one of the following 2 effects and resolve it. It is either bounce a battling character to your hand, and if you do, you salvage one and then discard one. Or you can do like the old gear, and you can move a card, and if you move a card, you just salvage. So if you move a card, you get a +1 because you are saving a card usually, and then you are salvaging one. If you bounce one, this becomes a filter. The bounce ends up being the thing you'll do a lot of the time when your board is full. But personally, at least, whenever I didn't have the back row set up, I always tried to use this card for the move because the move feels like significantly stronger because you get a straight salvage out of it too.
And you can always also use this card on turn. You can use either ability. Sometimes you want the filter to filter out a climax, or if you just use the second one, it's just like a drop salvage. You don't have to discard. You just play this card, you pay 1, you salvage.
It's also sick because it doesn't take up your slots, which is like a kind of an issue with some of the utility cards, like like this card. They take up board slots when you want to play them. This card does not. You pay the stock and you just say, sure, I drop salvaged. And you move on. Yeah, this card just feels really strong. It helps you to like loop combo over multiple turns, like with Mikasa. You can use it to protect your EPs, which is really cool in like standby matchups. If they try to contest your EPs, like in Quince or something with their 2/2, you can just kind of swoosh it out of the way into a battle lane. Or even like first 1k1 deck. Sometimes they only have one EP that can contest your card, and you just move it into a lane where it wins, and then it feels really strong because the Iron EP we're playing is not very big. But so when it can win randomly, it feels really sick. Definitely a card.
3.
Yeah, would not play 3.
3 was too many. Having multiple of this card in your hand does not feel good. Having the access to 1 feels incredible. So it's a 2 of.
Yeah, agreed. You always want to be able to at least see at least 1 in a game, and I think at 2 of you will find it, especially because Mikasa once again can grab it. And then we just have our so at 2, we have our memory kit counter. I just don't want to concede the Tokyo Revengers matchup. There's a world where I scrap this card and just say, screw Tokyo Revengers. I don't care. Reasonable. I just don't know if I want to do that yet. Tokyo Revengers I didn't see a lot of it at the event. So maybe it's just right to play a different card. But this card also just has more niche use. We'll talk about with like another card coming up. So there's a real reason to play just like a 3k counter that removes cards. We have our next All-Star, Ymir, Titan Inheritance Ritual. This card says if you have 2 or more core or titans, this gets 500 power and hand on core. And then when this attacks at level 3, this gets 3k or 6k power, so it'll attack at 13.5 with hand on core. This card, I think I played it in like 4 or 5 of my 7 games, and I used its hand on core effect in at least 2 of them. Mostly against Quince.
Actually, again.
Yeah. This card is more there for like Kanata and Quince. Again, I didn't play against Kanata, but this card is a house in practice against Kanata. Attacking at 13.5, and then alongside this card and this card, which we'll talk about, it can attack at 16k or 15.5, and then be defensively 9.5, which is really sick because Kanata can only attack at 12k max unless you play Robocos, which is something they don't really want to be doing, but they kind of have to do. And if they can't, they have to side this card because you can threaten memory kit counter with your 8 doors, and then they lose their Kanata for free. And that's not bueno. And then then it untaps, and then it kills the other Kanata, and they're just not having a good time. Same with Quince. You just scale over all their cards. This card they have to remove it. Like it forces Quince to go select for their clock shooter, and remove this card, which is something that feels really, really bad towards the late game, especially because Quince selection is not very good and can force them to have to Ricky to get it if they don't have it already engraved.
It's really clogged as well too, so it's like extra hard for Quince to be able to deal with this.
They start tossing cards just to answer this card because if you don't, you're going to keep running over their board, and they can't let that happen.
These 2 matchups are the reasons why we were running 2. I did play 2 Kanatas and 1 Rushia on the day, and this card was like MVP. The memory kit counter situation came up. which was super sick. I played it in again identical to Jason. It was like 4 or 5 games, and I did a hand encore it twice against the Kanata players. Because one of them canceled, and it's like, okay, I'm just gonna keep this card around to kill your Kanatas again. The card's super sick.
Yeah, we like this card. This card is just super sick. And then there's another option you could be playing. There's a 2/1 Eren that says whenever versus level 2 or higher, it generates a stock for you, which is really cool if you use the card just to answer a card and then you hit 3 the next turn. But anytime that you get to stay at 2 for an extra turn while you have this on the board, this card ends up putting in a bit more work because it can usually answer another card, whereas Eren just dies. And then this technically pays for the same stock because they got to attack twice for a hand. So you just, you ditch a card, this card stays on the board, it kills another card. You generated the stock anyway. So both are good options. We just like this card more because the hand encore is extremely relevant, and so is that extra 500 power on defense again. Eren only ties, Ymir wins with the memory kick counter. Then I'm just going to throw these both together because these cards are inseparable. Keen Mind Armin and Resisting Fate Armin. This was the reason that we played Core. Anybody that tells you there's another reason is probably lying, or they just don't have like a real idea of why to play Core. This is like the most broken card in AOT. This says Encore phase. If this is rested, it changes into this card from hand, and it has Act, Rest itself, choose one of your characters, give it 2500 power, and hand Encore, Hexproof. So it cannot be targeted by your opponent's effects like anti-change, tap counter, money counter, you name it. So you can give this to your new Eren EP that we got that'll be coming up, and that card cannot be anti-changed, which feels extremely strong, and it attacks at like 13-5 by itself. And then this changes into this card, which gives 2k assist to core characters in front, and it also gives the core characters hexproof, while this card has hexproof. And when this is played from hand or by change, you check X, where X is the number of core characters. Mind you, this card is not core. This card will usually be on your board when this changes. For a lot of the times, don't cheat. People have cheated in casuals and accidentally thought this was core, so don't do that. You will only check 4 with Archer on board, but that is a-okay. 4 is still a lot. We decided that interaction is lame, and that was the thing that stifled a lot of the decks we wanted to play. And what better to be playing than a deck that literally says my opponent does not get to interact with me, because we felt that is what most of the meta decks are right now, right?
Yeah, Kanata, Quince, they're all on defensive counters, random decks. The anti-change is in the meta because of Kanata. So, like, when that's around, Armin just gets even better. He's always been broken, and he's just even more broken right now. That's the main reason that pushed towards core.
Things like Kanata are playing anti-change counter, Quince is playing their anti-change counter, and they'll usually end up grabbing them like pretty early. Versus this deck, they literally can't grab the card. And when they can't grab that card, a lot of their defensive options in the mid-late game is like useless. Quince can still neg soul you, but we don't care about Quince neg soul. I talked to a couple Quince players after the event, and a couple of them also felt the opinion that the neg soul felt very useless, especially if you start seeing like AOT and stuff that have like restanders. It doesn't do anything.
Three stock. That card targets.
Well, they can neg soul the other lane or the
they can neg soul the Gabby or the other lane. Yeah, you're right.
So
you're right.
You'll always get a target off the neg soul, which is like fine. Same with money counter, can always get a target, but it won't always get the right target. They don't usually want a money counter. You don't usually want a neg soul or money counter the first attack somebody's doing. You want a neg soul like the last possible attack, or like the most influential.
The one that you need, to not die.
Yeah, so an attack for lethal, and like the last attack for lethal, or just their last attack in general, are the ones you want to stop. On average, there's usually situations that come up, but that is like the rule of thumb. And this card just kind of says no. And Sasha can play around this card, which is, the top end we're playing, obviously, by choosing when it spawns and just not spawning a card that is targetable. Very strong. We love this card. Armin is my boy, and he's literally the reason I bought this deck. So,
yep.
Then we have our Sasha. She is probably my favorite combo in the set. Everybody except for my teammate Kristen Yarbacher was pretty down on this card when it got released. So, there's a handful of other cards. They're like, Sasha's okay. I think this card is extremely powerful. I have been a fan of this profile since Slime, and then it got printed again with a similar cost as this one in Tokyo Avengers, and I love that card. I played that card in a lot of different decks with a lot of different combos because I felt like pay 2, ditch 2 is an extremely, extremely cheap cost for this effect. That card being slightly different because it can spawn itself. This card is more like Mashiro from Bank Dream, where it cannot spawn itself, but that is okay because this card is super easy to triple. Sasha says, on play, salvage a core Eldian. And then pay 2, drop 2 with the climax combo. At the end of this card's attack, pay the cost, send this to memory, change into any card that is not her. Any Eldian or core character that is not her. So, with this card, it's just a pseudo restander, but it salvages, so that means you only really need one of this card in your hand. That is like super huge. The selection with this card feels disgusting because you play this down, salvage another copy of itself, salvage another copy of itself, salvage counter, salvage the support cards, salvage whatever you want, any tech card you need, it gives it to you. It feels super duper insane all the time. And then when the salvage isn't relevant, it's just paying for the cost, so it's fine. This card basically reads pay 1, drop 1 in the end because you need 7 stock for triple, and then every subsequent next attack will pay 1 stock, and that feels really, really sick. It is super duper cheap. You can do double for 4 stock, so you get 5 attacks, and then every extra increment of 2 afterwards pays for the support card, the Gabby that we'll talk about, which means that you can math out a lot of different areas where you can extend your damage, which feels really sick. Also has really good synergy with her dad, which is really funny. The dad can give the Sasha the honor verse and then help pay for its cost and subsidize Gabby cost. Very, very cool. We like it a lot. Anything to say about Sasha, Carmen?
I think it's really the salvage. The salvage is what throws this card over for me. The fact that you can only have 1 copy, like you said, grab additional copies, grab stuff like Fumio, grab anything you need, grab Climax Swap. The toolboxing that it gives you at the top end of just having 1 card, you just get to pop off with nothing. It's very sneaky how efficient this card is. Because this card attacks, and then the card it summons attacks, which immediately pays for the next effect. So, like, the fact that this card is just so disgustingly cheap just makes it even that much better.
Also, really hard to interact with. The only thing that really stops this card is memory kick counter and tap counter, but tap counter card has Armin, so it'll usually be protected. And you can't tap the thing that it spawns, obviously, because it has to attack and resolve the attack before it spawns something. So it just feels really safe all the time. And memory kick counter doesn't really matter because, as I said, every increment of 2 stock that you have going into your next attacks pays for the other cards you can spawn to do things. So that means, if you memory kick one of this, and as long as I have more I can resolve, I can spawn cards, and then we can use the next card. The Gabby, this card is an Icy Tail. You can pay the 2 stock to Icy Tail them, which feels really, really sick. Very, very strong.
Yeah, it's like the stock that you gain by your opponent, like memory kicking you, you can just funnel into the Gabby effect.
You don't necessarily lose attacks. You get a chance at doing extra damage at least. So then we'll go into the Gabby now. This is Gabby Fatal Shot. Card reads terribly. I think every time somebody has complained to me about Sasha so far, they have complained to me about this card. Everybody tells me, this card sucks, why am I playing a pay 2 drop 1 vanilla Icy Tail with a heal? The answer is, because Sasha exists. This card makes this card so much better. I hate this because I hate the flavor of this, and that she spawns the Gabby, but it is what it is. The Icy Tail ends up just being relevant because you end up hoarding a lot of stock sometimes, and you just have extra stock, so having any effect that means you can do more is a lot. Gabby, once again, is just 2 or more others. She's an 11k. On attack, pay 2, drop 1 to Icy Tail the bottom 4 cards of your opponent's deck. Icy Tail is you mill the bottom 4, deal X damage to your opponent, where X is the number of climaxes you mill. And then she is on play from hand or by the Sasha's effect, you heal 1. So she gives the Sasha a salvage and a heal, which is super duper sick. Means you can take extra turns, and again she's just extra damage every instance of 2. So at 7 stock you have triple Sasha, you can spawn the Gabbies. At 9 stock you can resolve 1 Icy Tail. 11 stock you can resolve 2 Icy Tails. It's usually only the 1 at 9 stock. I don't really hit 11 very often, But you can go things like double Sasha, which is only 4 stock, and then 6 stock gives you the Gabby. 8 stock gives you 2 Gabbies, which might be things you want to look at depending on how your opponent's deck state is and stuff too. It's like very versatile. That's what's super duper sick. Is just the versatility of Sasha with this card, that this can extend out of nowhere and just give you extra reach that you shouldn't normally have.
Especially also fieldable like on its own.
Yeah,
I definitely had
fine card.
Like struggle games where this is like an off finisher that I had to go for, and I won those games specifically because this card is in the deck, and this card gives AOT an additional form of decompression because we don't have a stock swap, right? So having a Fumio and an Icy Tail is a good way to attack your opponent's deck, or it's good enough. It gives you an out that you otherwise wouldn't have at all. And like we have 4 green Rickies and 3 of this card. This card is not unfieldable. When you have to like take a turn where it's like right to heal, it's right to wait. You're behind, you have to try to live a turn in 3. You can play this card down, heal, maybe do an Icy Tail if you have the stock threshold to do so, and then it dies, and then it's in your waiting room for the Sasha the next turn. So
I mean, sometimes this card doesn't even die. It's 11k.
Yeah.
It's defendable.
The fact that we're running the Arm and Brainstorm means that this card will more likely than not always be 11k, because we'll hit the 2 or more other Eldian condition for her power.
Yeah, so like I had a game versus Hololive in round 1 where I only could do double Sasha. He pushed me to 3, and I was like, well, I have to just try to do something because I don't know if I can survive another turn. So he hit me to like 3-3 after I clocked. I slammed down double Sasha Fumio. He canceled everything, but he got stuck at 2, and my 2 Gabbies lived because he was playing Memory Hololive, and he could only really play 1 Polka because he was having a rough game where I was just killing all his stuff, and he had to keep spending his resources. He also missed a Ramorous, which kind of threw off his curve for playing his EPs, which kind of sucked for him, but was great for me. And this card survived, and this card killed him on the backswing because I hit the Icy Tail. I Icy Tailed twice, and the second one hit for 2, and it killed him. So very, very cool. I just grown so fond of this card over the time of playing it.
Yeah, agreed. Like, same here.
I definitely understand people not wanting to play Sasha, and I think this has been the biggest detractor people have talked to me about, where they're like, I don't want to play 3 of this card. To those people, I really just encourage you to give it a try. I think you will find as well that this card ends up feeling a lot better than it looks to put it in your deck as a 3 of. Then we have Aaron Determined. This early play is nuts. He is 4 or more early play, 4 more Eldian or Titan, or Eldian or Core. And then he is during your turn, if you have another Core or Eldian, he goes to 11k, and he has whenever versus your opponent's character, you may send it to stock, and they pay out the bottom stock. And then he heals. Just a vanilla healer. This card is just nuts. Hard removal is so strong right now. You know, removing things with hand on core, like the Quince cards. Anything you want to hand on core. Being able to threaten Kanata and just put Kanata away somewhere where they can't pay 3 for it. They have to like commit and like go get it and do whatever. Feels really strong. This card's also just big. With Armin, again, this attacks at 13k with the 2-1 attacks at 13.5 and a text proof. 14 with the climax, so it's just really, really big. And it just manages to like kind of just coast over everything and still just be like a good healer. Like it's hard to really say more about it. It's just when you play this card, everybody will see. You'll see this card just feels good. Like every time you play it, just feels
so
good.
Many rolls at once. Like such a good card.
Yeah, I also just appreciate that like being hard removal. So long as I'm not paying out a climax or something, I will usually just kick their card because it removes their option of pay 3 encoring a card they might want to pay 3 encore. Sometimes it happens and you don't really know you can't read your opponent, right? You don't know if they're going to pay 3 encore. You just don't give them the option. You say that's a desirable enough card, just get rid of it. I don't want to see it anymore.
Yeah, especially if it kills like an opposing early play or something. Yep. Just like get it off the board.
No, God forbid. I don't know what's in their hand. If they need it, they need it. I'm not dealing with it. That's a climax. And then finally, Mikasa Morning. This was the card that got eroded like 8 hours before Toronto's registration ended. This card reads, on play, you may rest a standing character. If you do, your opponent shuffles all climaxes back into their deck, their whole grave back into their deck except for 1 climax of their choice, so it's called a Fumio. And then it has, on attack, this card gets 1k times the number of other LD and or core characters, so it attacks at 14k with a full board by itself. Before, this card said you shuffle, your opponent picks one of your climaxes and you shuffle them back into your deck. Everybody kind of knew that was wrong except for Carmen's buddy Andy from PGH Weiss Schwarz. We'll just judge him for that. But this card had to be eroded. People were scared that Bushi was going to just double down and be like, no, it's fine. Thankfully, they did not. And thankfully, they did it before Toronto ended. I would have been really peeved if like Toronto regional registration ended and then this card got eroded.
Yeah, we were scrambling to resubmit our deck list to include this because it's obviously so strong with Sasha, right? You're swinging in for 3s and 4s.
Yep.
So it's just any amount of extra clean cards you can shuffle back increases the likelihood that all your swings are going to go through.
Yeah, we just love this card. Like honestly, it did so much work the whole game, the whole event. I think I only had to play it 3 of the games, but it was always available to me because once again, this card exists. This card says on play salvage. This can salvage this at any point. I actually lost the game in the 7th round, which would have made it if I top 8'd it or not, to my local because my deck was like 4 and 15 or something like that, and I was like not really poised to die. And he just sat there. My grave was 3 climaxes and like 20 something cards, and he's just like, "Do I have my Fumio? Do I have my Fumio?" And then he's like, "Oh, it's there. Play Sasha, grab the Fumio." And I'm like, "Oh wow, I lost," because he just went double Sasha, put me to like.
Yeah, then you die.
Like a 7 and 30 and some 30
I
something.
almost got you with that too when we also had the mirror. Yeah,
you did not have it.
I was having a terrible game, and I almost was able to come back on that.
Always is terrifying. You hate when decks that can push a lot of damage have access to this kind of card, because it is something you have to be constantly afraid of when you leave a small deck and you have like a really empty grave. It never feels good to play against.
Like so free access to it. And playing this card down and being like, oh, I go from triple sashing to double sashing, but I shove 20 clean cards back, like that's a no-brainer.
Well, it's like what I think the math was every one stage of decompression is like equivalent to a burn 2. Yeah. So all of a sudden, you're not favored to stick damage, and then you make it, and then a 4 sticks, and you're just like, hoo, that's pretty good. AOT did not have decompression before. That was one of their biggest issues. That's why the Mikasa level 3 was so good, because it was such small instances of damage that you could squeak through compressed decks. This just solved that problem, and now makes these more impactful finishers really good. Other cards we were looking at considering for this deck was actually there's a 3/2 Jean in the new set. He is on play. You can spawn a dude from your hand to the field and give it 2k power. And then he has pay 3, ditch 2, burn 4. He's just an extra extender. He works really well with this card. You can do the Konosuba classic of play the card, play the Fumio, decompress your opponent, and then just try to stick a 4 with the Jean. Very toxic, very strong. It was the Konosuba's bread and butter way to close games when they don't have a good climax combo to play. And we can do that if we wanted to. Where? Not totally sure yet. Gotta figure that out. But we'll figure it out. Probably gonna be like -1 Ymir for a Jean. It also just helps you be able to play your Sashas.
I think it's definitely worth it.
Yeah, you can play your Sasha off of it. It just gives you an extra body, like an extra 2-soul body, which can matter sometimes when you're low on stock. Sasha can also spawn it when you have excess stock and you need like a bigger push than an Icy Tail can be. As long as you can afford it, it's there. And a lot of time you can definitely afford it. You have 8+ing triggers. You start in your restanding, so you're attacking like 5-6 times. All of a sudden you're like, oh, I hit 2 doors. I can afford the burn now. So this deck, overall, I am just very, very happy with it. I'm definitely going to be playing this deck again for New York, which will be the next event that I go to. And I encourage more people to really look into it and try it. This deck was written off by a lot of people, Carmen included, to be very boring, and nobody wanted to play it. And I just sat there kind of shilling it in the corner, and I'm like, guys, AOT is really good. Please trust me. And
probably not my first thing, but then I remember, like, I was playing Levi, and I sat there at the event in Chicago before the tournament, and I was like, Steve goes out and crashes, like, his whole board against me, and I go, wow, this sucks. And I was like, people are going to do this, huh? It's been a long time since I've had to play an on-reverse finisher. It's been a while. And Jason's like, just try Sasha and Gabby. And I was like, okay. I threw it in. and the deck instantly,
Yeah,
started being like incredibly resilient.
You got to remember when you have 8 plussing triggers, you have 8 doors. Even in bad games where you miss your combo and stuff, like a single door trigger can go so far. Like you hit a door, you have a gear in your hand, all of a sudden you're back to like a full hand after you clock draw, and you can just take a full turn without having comboed, and it feels really strong. And I think people forget just how impactful like 8 doors can be. 8 doors used to be a really strong lineup, and it only got better with the better cards that AOT has.
And super high floor.
Yeah, we like this deck a lot. Other people might try other things. I still want to try Wind level 1 combo with this, but 90% chance that this is what I'm playing again, with maybe some different numbers. But I do encourage people to try this. The community tier list rated this deck really low. We got to have the tier 4 option select for Toronto, where I only scrubbed out because my deck was tier 4. This deck is...
Thankfully, that did not happen. It performed as well as we thought it was going to.
Yeah.
So
this is not a tier 4 deck. This deck is probably, in my opinion, this is the best way to play AOT right now, I think.
Yeah, agreed.
Either this or like Windor. I think Sasha is the right play though, 100% of the time. She is just like so impactful, and definitely please try this deck out, guys. If you have any questions, leave comments. You can always reach out to me on Discord. I'm in all the Discords. Prinzoigen, #7136. I'm always open to talk about this deck. I'm sure Carbon here is too. I don't know where your Discord is, but he is the Beanwolf.
I believe I am Beanwolf #0007.
Yeah, so you want to talk about this in the Discord with us? Feel free. Thank you guys for watching, and you guys all have a great day.